Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another webinar sponsored by the Clifton Park Library. My name is Lisa Dougherty. I've been doing this webinar series now for a little while, and this is our last meeting for 2021, which is kind of exciting, I guess. Maybe we're all eager to get this year over with, maybe not quite as much as last year, but still ready to go on to 2022. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about DNA testing that goes beyond just ancestry. Most of my DNA presentations, if you've been following along with me, you will know have a lot to do with ancestry. And that's simply because, well, the main reason is because that's the one I personally am most familiar with. It's the testing company that I use the most. And also because it has the largest amount of testers. So if we're going to go with majority, then we tend to go with Ancestry because that's the place where most people have tested. But there comes a time and a place sometimes when we need to go beyond what Ancestry has to offer, or we have an interest in some sort of aspect of DNA that Ancestry can't help us with. So we need to go a little bit further afield. So today's presentation is going to be just about some of the options that there are for moving your DNA testing beyond Ancestry, moving your Ancestry test to other places, and just some different things that you can do that are options out there. I would urge all of you, if you are interested in these things, to try them out. Really, the only way to learn is by doing. And if you get yourself onto these sites and if you start learning how they work by just doing a little bit every day or a little bit here and there, that's really the best way to learn. There are lots of how-to videos and that kind of thing. Those vary in quality from very good to not so great. But really, there's no substitute for just on-the-job training, so to speak, to just get on there and dig in and to mess around with it and see what you can get out of it. So today we're going to talk about these topics, and most of them are going to be fairly brief because any one of these we could be here all day talking about. So we're going to do a short overview of the other testing sites aside from Ancestry. So we know a lot about Ancestry already, but we're going to do a short overview of the other testing sites. We're going to talk a little bit about GEDMATCH and what it is. We're going to talk about how we get our DNA from wherever we originally tested to other sites and to GEDMATCH. We're going to talk about what a chromosome browser is, what triangulation is. We're going to talk about some third-party tools. Third-party tools are one of those things where, stay tuned, it's always changing and they're always being added to. And then we're going to talk about a website called Promethease for health results. So if you're interested in the health aspect of your DNA, this is an alternative to paying the high price for 23andMe and their health test. Okay, so as we know, Ancestry is not the only DNA testing company. There are several others, probably 23andMe you would have already heard of, and possibly MyHeritage, but there's also Family Tree DNA and Living DNA. All of these are sites where you can buy a DNA test kit and you can test and get results just as you did on Ancestry. But you're going to get a little bit different results depending on who is already tested there, who's in the database, and plus their ethnicity results are going to be different as well. So each of these is going to have a little bit of a different offering. So starting with 23andMe, which is probably the second most familiar company for people aside from Ancestry. And they also have the second largest amount of testers at 12 million. Ancestry's database is about twice that, about over 20 million. So 23andMe has 12 million people tested. Their regular price for the Ancestry test is $99. Occasionally, they will have sales. They don't have them very often. If you want your Ancestry plus a health report, that is $199. The health report is available. Again, it's going to be testing your DNA for pre-existing health conditions. This is not to be used as a substitute for genetic counseling with a doctor. It's just mainly to give you an overview. And 23andMe does a very good job of explaining exactly what their health report gives you. So if you're interested in knowing that before you purchase, then I would go onto their website and I would check out the information available. It is a saliva test similar to the Ancestry test, wherein you're spitting in a tube to get your sample. It's not a cheek swab, so it's a saliva test. 23andMe has what is considered a basic tool for a lot of people, a chromosome browser, which allows you to see where you and your matches match each other on what chromosomes. Some people find this essential for research. Other people don't get involved in it that much. Just depends on what you're intending to do with it. 23andMe does not accept anyone else's DNA sample. They only accept their own. So if you want to be in the database and compare your DNA to the 12 million other people in the database, you have to order a test and you have to test there. They will not allow uploads of DNA from other companies. Ancestry also does not allow uploads of DNA from other companies. But you can take your DNA from 23andMe or from Ancestry and upload it to companies that allow this. And we'll see that in a minute. And 23andMe does not accept uploads of family trees. You can put family tree information on your test. You can put things like your surnames. They have a beta family tree that they make from your matches, which is kind of interesting. They sort of do it without any names. They just kind of throw the matches in there where they may match you. You can play around with that, but you cannot take your family tree and upload it to 23andMe. So that's sort of a significant drawback for 23andMe. It does not have the built-in genealogy component that Ancestry does. So it's a little bit more difficult to figure out how your matches match you, to put your matches on a tree. It's a little more difficult using 23andMe than it is Ancestry. And also I find that 23andMe testers tend to be a little less involved in the whole process than Ancestry testers. That's just in general. Maybe it's just my matches that are not as involved, but I do find that to be the case, that a lot of people who have tested at 23andMe are not as interested in the genealogy aspect of the test. So then there's family tree DNA. Now, family tree DNA began the DNA for genealogy movement quite a while ago, probably as many as 20 years ago. And they started out with the first two tests for DNA and genealogy that existed, the test for Y-DNA and for mitochondrial DNA. So family tree DNA still performs Y-DNA and mitochondrial DNA tests. These are not as popular as the autosomal tests, which are the regular tests that everyone takes. The Y-DNA test only follows the male line, so it's an unbroken male line, and you cannot take a Y-DNA test if you're a female. The mitochondrial DNA test follows mitochondrial DNA that is passed down from a mother to her children. So a male can take the mitochondrial DNA test because he inherits his mother's mitochondrial DNA, but he does not pass it on. Women are the only people that will pass on mitochondrial DNA. So both of these databases, the Y-DNA database and the mitochondrial DNA database, are fairly limited in the number of testers. And so a lot of people don't feel like they get their money's worth out of this test. I think they're expecting them to be a little bit more like the autosomal tests. And so they don't get as many testers, and it's really just not the same type of test. That being said, family tree DNA does offer an autosomal test. There are about 950,000 people tested that are in the database. The test's regular price is $79. That is about what it almost always is. I don't really see too many sales on family tree DNA. Family tree DNA gives you the option to have a cheek swab test. So it is definitely one of those tests that you might want to use if you have a hard time producing enough saliva to do a saliva test. Family tree DNA is a cheek swab. You have the opportunity with a family tree DNA test to participate in surname studies. So a lot of people that have done a Y-DNA test set up what they call surname studies. So in other words, if your last name is Jones, then someone might set up the Jones surname project, and it would invite anyone that is a match to join into that surname study. And those are hosted on Family Tree DNA. Family Tree DNA also has a chromosome browser. We talked about a little bit about that with 23andMe. You are able to upload your DNA data from any of the other companies to Family Tree DNA. So if you've tested an Ancestry, you do not need to pay for a Family Tree DNA test. You can take your raw data from Ancestry and upload it to Family Tree DNA. And you will get matches and you will get an ethnicity estimate. There is a one-time fee that allows you to access some of the tools to use on Family Tree DNA, including the Chromosome Browser. And it's a nominal fee. I think it's about $10, something like that. You can upload a family tree file to Family Tree DNA. So if you have a family tree GEDCOM file that you're working on that you want to upload to Family Tree DNA, you can do that and attach it to your DNA test at Family Tree DNA. This does help when people are going to look to compare ancestors if you have a tree displayed. But again, keep in mind, there's only 950,000 people tested. So it's, way, way less than Ancestry and way less than 23andMe. But it is a good idea if you're looking especially to solve an unknown parentage case or working on an adoption case. It is a good idea to have your DNA on this site as well as the others. So MyHeritage is a Ancestry-ish type site. They incorporate not only DNA testing, but also genealogy records and the ability to make a family tree. So they have all of those components on MyHeritage. They have about 5.5 million tested at MyHeritage, so a fairly significant number. Their regular price is $69. I think at the moment it might be on sale for $49 for the holidays, but the regular price is $69. MyHeritage is also a cheek swab. So again, that's the little Q-tip that you swab the inside of your cheek, and that's how you submit your sample to MyHeritage. You are able to use your DNA data with a family tree. So without being a member of MyHeritage, you can have a tree that has up to 250 people, and you can attach your DNA to your tree, which makes it easier for people to see where they might connect with you. MyHeritage is known for having a fairly large amount of European testers. So if you are looking for cousins in a European country, maybe Germany or England or Australia or somewhere like that, then you may have a decent chance of finding them on MyHeritage. MyHeritage also tells you where your match comes from. So if you see a match and it's got a little German flag on it, then you can know that that match lives in Germany. So it does give you that information. MyHeritage also has a chromosome browser, which some people find very handy. MyHeritage accepts uploads of raw DNA data from other companies. So if you test at Ancestry or if you test at 23andMe, you can upload your results to MyHeritage. You do not need to buy another test. It will accept genealogy file or GEDCOM uploads. So if you have a genealogy file, you can upload it to MyHeritage. You can also purchase a subscription for genealogy records, just like you might with Ancestry. That's a separate price. It's not necessary, but you can do that. And there's quite a few interesting, sophisticated tools for comparing and analyzing your DNA matches. And we'll look at a couple of those in a few minutes. But MyHeritage has quite a lot to offer. Probably about the only thing that is not advantageous for it is that it has a fairly small amount of testers. So that's about the really the only drawback. Living DNA has been in existence for maybe 4 or 5 years. They're based in the UK. They have a fairly small amount of testers, but they have not released the size of their database, which leads people to believe that they're probably pretty small. Their regular price is $99. they have what they call fine-tuned British and Irish ethnicity estimates. I don't personally have an ethnicity estimate from them, so I can't tell you how fine-tuned it is. They have a partnership with Find My Past, which is another Ancestry-ish type site that's based in the UK. You can link your living DNA test kit with your family tree on Find My Past. So again, if you are dealing with largely British or Irish ancestry, it might behoove you to test at Living DNA. You can upload your raw data from Ancestry or 23andMe to Living DNA. And matches are now available. So you will get matches if you upload your raw DNA sample to Living DNA. You will get matches. Again, you're not going to have the database size here that you have somewhere like Ancestry, but you may have some unique matches. Something that I find is sometimes you will see the same matches in all of the different testing companies. That means that they're probably working on something, some kind of aspect of their heritage that they want to know more about, possibly an unknown parentage case, that kind of thing. So you will see repeat testers in all these databases. It is also a cheek swab test. So that's another great advantage to Living DNA, is that it's a cheek swab test. All right, so then there's GEDMATCH. GEDMATCH is something that maybe some of you have heard of. GEDMATCH is not a testing company, so you cannot purchase a test from GEDMATCH. However, you can use your existing test to find information using GEDMATCH. So GEDMATCH was created in 2010 by Curtis Rogers and John Olson. And the reason it was created was to compare DNA from different testing companies. So when the testing companies started doing the tests, Family Tree DNA, Ancestry, 23andMe, there was no way that existed to compare between companies. So say you tested at Ancestry and your first cousin tested at 23andMe. There would be no way for you to compare your DNA unless either one of you tested with the other company, or then came along GEDMATCH. So GEDMATCH's whole purpose is for people to be able to take their tests from their original testing company and upload them to a central place where they could compare their data. So that's why GEDMATCH was created, to help facilitate these comparisons between companies. There is a free upload. You can upload your DNA data from most, and in fact, all of the testing companies that we just examined. So Ancestry, 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, MyHeritage, Living DNA. You can download your raw data from any of those companies and upload it to GEDMATCH. So GEDMATCH accepts uploads from all of those places, and it is free to do that. There are several different ethnicity calculators on GEDMATCH, including Neanderthal, which is ever popular with people. They like to see how much Neanderthal DNA they have. So those things will help you to look at your ethnicity in a different way. They're very interesting to look at. A lot of them are very scientific in nature, so you might have to do a little bit of reading to really understand what they mean. But they're definitely something interesting to look at on GEDMATCH. There are plenty of tools to use on GEDMATCH. You can compare your DNA one-to-one with another person's DNA. You can compare your DNA to everyone in the database if you would like. GEDMATCH offers a Chromosome Browser, which again will tell you where exactly you and a match have the same DNA and on what chromosome. Another popular calculator on GEDMATCH is, are your parents related? Pretty much everybody does this. When they get on GEDMATCH, they run their kit and they find out if their parents were related. And what it does is it just shows you if your parents from your test, the 50% from your mother and the 50% from your father, if any of those chromosomes overlap. So it will tell you the answer to the question if your parents are related. And there are also other fancy tools, lots of things that you can use. And if you want to pay a monthly subscription fee for that, the basic tools, the one-to-one comparison, the one-to-many comparison, the chromosome browser, those are all basic tools that are available to anyone for free. The higher tier tools are available for a monthly fee. And again, that just depends on your needs. If that's going to be something you're going to be working on a lot, then maybe it's worth it for you to pay the monthly fee. If not, you might do it once and try it and decide it isn't anything you're going to use. So it's going to be a highly individual choice. So here's an example of a one-to-many comparison that I ran from my kit. You get what you get with when you upload your DNA is you get a kit number, and you can see all the way over to the left, there are these numbers with A's and M's in front of them. The A, the one at the top, A969921, that's my mother's kit. And the A means that her test came from Ancestry. So that's a little bit of a cheat sheet that you can tell where the person originally tested. The M, I believe, is 23andMe. The T, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I believe M is 23andMe. So this little, you can see that this is one of the main issues that people have with GEDMATCH, is that it tends to look pretty scientific. It's not made user-friendly, really, like Ancestry is. Like Ancestry provides you with lots of explanations about what things are and basically holds your hand and walks you through it. GEDMATCH is very scientific in its approach. So you have to do a lot of background work in order to really understand what this is telling you. Basically, this is a one-to-many comparison of my DNA compared to the other people in the database. So you can see at the top of the list, this is again arranged from highest match to lowest match. At the top of the list is my mother, who matches me with 3,571 CMs. So I would expect her to be among my highest matches because I uploaded her data to GEDMATCH. The second match matches me at 324 centimorgans. So that's somewhere in second cousin range. So it's gone down a little bit. So you can see as you go down, the numbers get smaller and smaller. So that's basically what the one-to-many comparison looks like. And you can see in blue in the column that says GED Wikitree, you can see some people have the GED, which means they have uploaded a GEDMATCH or a GEDCOM file. So I could click on that and be brought to their tree. And that may be able to tell me how we might match each other. So here's an example of one of those ethnicity calculators from GEDMATCH. And you can tell that there's some interesting categories here. This is my admixture calculation, and it's telling me that I am 49.08 North Atlantic. Okay, so North Atlantic, that could be anything from, England, Ireland, Sweden, Finland, anything like that. So that's about half. Then 21.82 Baltic. So you have to kind of figure out, and there are explanations in here to tell you what these different things mean. But this is just one of the ethnicity calculators that there is available for you to look at on GEDMATCH. So one of the issues with GEDMATCH is that it's a public database. By public, we mean that there is access to pretty much anybody. Anyone is granted access, and among that anyone includes law enforcement. So law enforcement has used GEDMATCH in the solving of cold cases. Probably the most famous one of those, the Golden State Killer in California. His DNA that was taken from the crime scenes was uploaded to GEDMATCH and compared to the other kits in GEDMATCH. And that's how genetic genealogist C.C. Moore solved that case. Broke it down basically using the matches and made trees and figured out the identity of the Golden State Killer. So if you've watched any of the TV shows that feature CeCe Moore as the DNA detective, then you will know how this process works. So if you have privacy concerns, how can you keep your data secure? There are several ways of doing that. If you want to take advantage of some of the things that GEDMATCH has to offer for us for helping with our genealogy, but you still kind of are a little leery of keeping your data private, you can do a few things. One of the things that you can do is you can register your kit under an alias. So you do not need to use your real name. And for that matter, this doesn't just go for GEDMATCH. You can also do this for Ancestry. You can do this at any other databases. I see things like names like Jane Doe. I see kits that have 0 names on them. So you can basically use whatever alias you want or use no name at all. It's up to you. And then that way, you know, you have the information and no one else knows it's you. Of course, you don't want to attach a GEDCOM file to this if you want it to remain anonymous, because that's going to help people to figure it out. So the less information on it, the better. Another thing that you could do is you could use a dedicated email account for your DNA. A lot of people do this when they set up their DNA kits to send in. They use a unique email for this. So they don't use their general email. They set up a special email just for DNA connections. So that could also be very helpful in keeping your data a little bit more private. You can make your kit on GEDMATCH research only, which means that you can see the information when you do a one-to-many comparison, but people cannot see your kit. So if you match 10 or 12 or 15 people, if those 10 or 12 or 15 people do the same kind of function, your kit will not come up in it. So again, this is good for people that just want to lurk and get the information, but it's not so great for people who may want to connect with others. So that's really what the research only is. It is an option on GEDMATCH if you are so inclined. So another thing to do is just don't upload in the first place. A lot of people don't find it necessary to upload to GEDMATCH. Basically, it's mostly for people who are working on unknown parentage cases or who are really interested in furthering their genealogy and want to use every tool available to them. It's not really for the casual DNA person. And there is an article called Protecting Your Privacy on GEDMATCH, which you can find right on the GEDMATCH website. This will give you other suggestions besides the ones of what I've just talked about. So that might be a good thing to look up. Oh, and this is actually the link to that. So if you want to take a picture of this link, this will give you the information about protecting your privacy on GEDMATCH. And we can always go back to that too after. All right, so we've talked a little bit about downloading and uploading raw DNA data. So what exactly is that process and what does it entail? So if we're talking about Ancestry, a lot of us have our DNA on Ancestry. These are the steps that you're going to follow to download your raw DNA data. Now, when you download your raw DNA data, that means you're taking the data that you submitted to Ancestry, and you are downloading a copy of that information to be placed on other websites. When your data is hosted at the Ancestry DNA website and the other websites, it is protected by Ancestry's internal safeguards. So when you download your data from that site, you are removing your data from that site and the safeguards. You will still have your DNA on the site. What you're downloading is a copy, but you're downloading a copy, which means the Ancestry cannot guarantee the security of that copy. They can only guarantee the security of the copy if it's left on their site. So when you do this, there's going to be a lot of, are you sure you want to do this, et cetera, et cetera. So if you are sure, then you go ahead and you give consent. So to do this, you're going to go to your settings which are in the upper right-hand corner of your DNA homepage. And then on the settings page, you're going to click on Download Raw DNA Data. You're going to have to enter your Ancestry password. And then you're going to have to say, I understand that my DNA data is no longer going to be protected by Ancestry if I do this. And then you would click Confirm. Then you're going to find a place on your computer that you can store your DNA data. What I did was I made a folder on my desktop and I put raw DNA data on the folder. And so when I was downloading my data, I had a place to put it, so I would always be able to find it. You're going to receive an email from Ancestry that asks you to confirm the data download. You would click on that link, and then the link takes you back to the Ancestry page where you're finally going to be able to download your raw DNA file. When you're prompted, you will save this DNA file to the folder that you just created. When you get this folder, this file, it's going to be a zipped file. It's not something that you want to unzip. You don't even want to open it. You don't need to open it. All it's going to look like to you are a bunch of numbers that aren't going to mean anything to you. So all you're going to do is just leave it in its zipped form and leave it where you put it in the folder. So that's all you need to do. You don't need to do anything more in the download process. So now you've got your raw DNA data file on your computer, and now you're able to upload it to other sites. So each site is going to have a little bit different directions, but they all have very understandable and easy to follow directions. Every one of these sites, GEDMATCH, Family Tree DNA, MyHeritage, they are going to have instructions for doing this. They're usually located under settings. You will need to set up a free account with each site. Some are going to, I think MyHeritage charges for uploads now. I believe it's a nominal fee, about $10. The others don't charge, but they may charge for certain aspects of it. But you do need to create an account on any of the sites. Then you're going to follow the instructions as given by the particular site that you're using. Again, you're not going to open or unzip the contents of the raw data folder. It's going to be uploaded exactly how you downloaded it. So you don't need to do anything to it in order to upload it. Some of these sites take a day or two. Sometimes they may take up to a week to process the data. It depends on how busy they are. So when you start the upload process, just be patient. You will receive an email when your results are ready to view. So just be aware that it is a process that takes a little while sometimes. So what can we get from a chromosome browser? So a chromosome browser, basically defined, is a little roadmap. It's a roadmap of your chromosomes, and it's meant to show where on what chromosome you and your match have common DNA. So we're looking at a chromosome browser map that came from MyHeritage here with the purple lines. And this is a map of the DNA that I share with my third cousin, Daryl. And each one of these chromosomes, we share similar bits of DNA that we both would have inherited from our common great-great-grandparents. So we share a set of common great-great-grandparents. So these purple lines represent the DNA that he and I both inherited from those great-great-grandparents. So this is really the benefit to using a chromosome browser. It allows you to see where you've inherited the DNA and where you have DNA in common with other matches. So for example, in contrast to the one that we just looked at, so we looked at this one, this is my third cousin. This is the DNA that I shared with my third cousin. If we look at this map, this is the DNA that I share with my son, Sam. So since Sam inherited 50% of his DNA from me, this is a pretty significant amount of DNA that Sam and I share, a very large amount. A chromosome browser is defined by the ISOG Wiki, and the ISOG Wiki is the International Society of Genetic Genealogists, and their wiki is similar to Wikipedia, only it's the DNA wiki. So anything you find on the ISOG Wiki has to do with DNA. In autosomal DNA testing, the term chromosome browser is used to describe a tool which allows the user to do a comparison between one or more matches to see how much DNA the user shares in common with them. The browser provides a graphical view of the half-identical segments shared with the match or matches on each individual chromosome. Matches can be on the paternal or maternal chromosome, but the chromosome browser cannot distinguish between the two. So in other words, when we're looking at this map here of the DNA that I share with my son, Sam, that's a comparison between he and I. So 100% of the chromosomes here on this map between he and I are all maternal because we're not comparing his DNA with his father. When we look back at the map with Daryl, we can see that it's much significantly less. But because I know my cousin Daryl is on my mother's side, then I know that this DNA is inherited on the maternal side. So again, chromosome browsers are not going to tell you whether it's maternal or paternal, but if you know that about your match, then that's more of an advantage. You know which side they go on, and it would make it easier to pinpoint those segments to a particular ancestor. So how do we use a chromosome browser? You're using this tool to view and compare the individual DNA segments you share with any given match. The browser allows you to see the length and position of shared segments. Generally, longer segments are those that have tended to be passed down from specific ancestors. When you see little broken bits and pieces, those don't tend to be as accurate in the ability to trace back to one single ancestor. So just thinking about the use of a chromosome browser, if we go back to Daryl again, if I compare my DNA to Daryl, and then I notice that there's 2 or 3 other people that also share DNA with both myself and Daryl, if we all share a long segment, say on chromosome 2, you can see there's a long segment there. If we all share that same segment, then we can probably surmise that all of us descend from the same set of great-great-grandparents. And so that allows us to identify maybe who some of these matches are because we are sharing some of these same pieces of DNA. So that's the idea behind it. Again, it's definitely an advanced skill. It's something that you want to mess around with. I don't mess around with it as much as I should, but having it available to you on some of these other sites allows you to give it a try. So you're able to use a chromosome browser on sites like MyHeritage, on Family Tree DNA, on 23andMe, and on GEDMATCH. Ancestry is the notable exception. They do not offer a chromosome browser. They have cited privacy issues as the reason why they don't do this. That's just, I guess, what their reasoning is. And I don't see that they're going to change their policy anytime soon. It's probably going to stay the way it is. Ancestry has what other sites don't have. They have a very large amount of testers. So that in some ways makes up for the lack of a chromosome browser. Using your chromosome browser on any of the other sites, you are simply going to choose one of your matches and click compare. You can do this on any one of these sites. It is going to compare your chromosomes with the chromosomes of the person that you choose. So it will show you where your DNA overlaps. So again, it's a little bit of a higher skill, but it's something that can be practiced and you can get some definite information out of it. This is an example from the Family Tree DNA chromosome browser, and this is just a portion of the chromosomes because the browsers generally show you from chromosomes 1 to chromosomes 22, with 23 being the gender chromosome, so we don't need to use that one. but it does show you from 1 to 22. This one only shows 1 to 10. But with this third cousin, I share significant portions of DNA on chromosome 2 and on chromosome 3. And then here is a first cousin on MyHeritage. And again, these are only chromosomes 1 through 10. So the bottom half, I'm sure, had other sharing. So this is a lot of shared DNA on chromosome 2 and again on chromosome 3. So triangulation. Triangulation is, we use our chromosomes browsers to see about triangulation. Triangulation means that ourselves and 2 or more other matches share DNA at exactly the same place on the exact same chromosome. And it's called triangulation because it takes 3 in order for there to be a true triangulation. So if we're looking at this shared DNA from MyHeritage here, this little map, it's drawing a circle around 4 triangulated segments here on chromosome 19. Each of these colors represents a DNA match. So one match is pink, one match is orange, one match is yellow, and one match is green. So this is telling us that all 4 of these matches match exactly on chromosome 19. So we may be able to trace that particular piece of DNA back to a common ancestor. But the information that it's giving us is that we are all descended from the same common ancestor because we triangulate at this particular place. Again, a higher skill, but something that you can certainly practice. So triangulation, here's another example of it. A chromosome browser comparison between the test taker, you, and at least 2 other individuals shows a match on the same chromosome at the exact same position. This infers the DNA is inherited from the same ancestor. You have to support your successful triangulation with paper research. So in other words, if you're seeing a triangulation on the screen, you need to back it up with paper research. So in other words, you need to have the information that all of the trees of all of these matches go back to the same ancestral couple. So that's how you back up this information, is by paper research. You can apply this logic then to an unknown match. So if you've done your research on 3 or 4 people that all match at the same position, and you know that they all descend from your great-great-grandparents, you can take another match who matches at the same position and infer that they too come from the same set of great-great-grandparents. So that's where the benefit of the paper research and the triangulation comes in together. All right, so a little bit about third-party tools. And when we say third-party tools, we're talking about software tools that are made by developers that are independent of the testing companies. So there's always people out there that are making new and different ways to analyze our DNA. One of those is called DNA Painter. It allows you to paint the chromosomes that you share with other matches. You have to use data from GEDMATCH, 23andMe, MyHeritage, or Family Tree DNA to do this because Ancestry does not have a chromosome browser. So you can use it on DNA Painter to paint your chromosomes matching different people. It allows you to visualize overlapping segments of DNA between different databases. There's a small subscription fee, $30 for 6 months, $55 for a year. It's a lot of fun to do. Depends on, how much you want to get into it, if you really want to do it, but it is a lot of fun. DNA Painter has a lot of different tools on it. It's not just the painting of the chromosome browser. There's lots of other tools that are available on DNA Painter as well. Genetic Affairs is another third-party tool. And what Genetic Affairs does is it takes your matches from a particular site and it clusters them together. So it makes a visualization out of your matches so that you can tell which matches connect to each other. MyHeritage has this feature on their site. So if you are on MyHeritage, you can run this particular test automatically from MyHeritage's website. You can go onto the Genetic Affairs website and run them from other testing sites as well. But MyHeritage has it already built into their website. The idea here is to take your matches and group them so that they're not just a big list of names, they're a list of names that are related to each other. So it helps you to visualize what matches are related to each other. So it's definitely a very interesting tool and something that would be very useful. And here we are with MyHeritage offering auto clusters. Each of those little squares represents a group of matches that group together. So maybe the pink square matches all of the descendants of your maternal great-grandparents. The orange matches all of your descendants of your paternal great-grandparents, etc. So that's what those little squares mean. They are related matches. Other third-party tools, Genetic Affairs auto clustering, DNA, there's many of them. Software developers are constantly developing different things. The tools you use will depend on how much money you want to spend, how deeply into this you are, because you literally could be doing this 24/7 if you wanted to. If you want to know what some of the third-party tools are, you can again go to the ever useful ISOG wiki, and it will give you an overview of what types of third-party tools are out there and what they can do for you. So you may find something on there that would be appealing to what you're using your DNA test for. So lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about health reports. The website is called Promethease, and this is a website where you can upload your raw DNA data just like you did to MyHeritage or Family Tree DNA or GEDMATCH. You can upload your DNA data to Promethease to get a health report. It's significantly less money than springing for the health report on 23andMe. It's going to be fairly scientific in nature, so it may not give you the pretty presentation that you would probably get on 23andMe, but it will give you basically the same information. So it's using your DNA to predict lower risk of certain things, higher risk of certain things. Again, it isn't going to take the place of a medical examination. It's just merely for your information. The most of these reports that are available on this website are $12, and they're produced in under 10 minutes. So it's really quick, and it's a fairly easy thing to do. Again, there will be instructions on the website on how to do it. Okay, so we've talked a lot. Has anybody got any questions about anything? And feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to and just ask, because there's an awful lot here to go through.
Well, people might be gathering their thoughts because that was a lot of much more technical information than
Yes,
we're used to hearing. Just wanted to let everyone know that we are not going to have a session in January. We're going to take January off. We'll be back February 8th. I think it's February 8th. The first, check our calendar. We'll be back at the beginning of February.
second Monday.
Yeah, and that topic is to be determined, but keep an eye on our calendar for that.
Yes. And it's actually February 14th.
Oh, see, I miscalculated. Thank you, Lisa.
Yep, I'm just looking at the calendar now. So it's February 14th.
Oh, yeah, I was looking at Tuesday. I just realized I was looking at Tuesday for some reason. Okay. So Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day.
Exactly.
We'll be back here.
Yeah, exactly.
So
everybody, has anybody got any questions? If it's a lot to take in. I know, like I said, I would urge you, if you're at all interested in any of this stuff, to just give it a try. I've only like really just dipped my toe into a lot of this stuff. I haven't really worked a lot with it. I find I use Ancestry for most things that I'm doing. So I don't have to get too technical, but it is good to have a little bit of knowledge of different things, and occasionally you may need to use them. So it's good to at least be aware of what's out there. So
Really is quite amazing the amount of detail and information you can get from these sites.
oh, absolutely. All right, one question here, and if I can get my mouse to work, here we go. I heard Ancestry is better for male testing and 23andMe is better for female. Is that true? Absolutely not. It makes no difference. Autosomal tests are not gender based at all. They are fully dependent on the other people who have tested in the database. So maybe whoever told you that maybe had more relatives from the male side on one and more relatives from the female side on the other, but it absolutely has zero to do with gender. Autosomal tests will give you DNA from anybody in your family, male, female, whoever, but it is fully dependent on who has taken the test. So if more people from your mother's family have taken the test, then it might seem like it's better for females. So that's really kind of, I think, where people get tripped up. Okay, anybody else? Questions? You're welcome, Barbara. Well, if you have any questions and you would like to send them to me, you can send me an email. I believe it's on the handout that Tanea sent out. And if you think of something later, feel free to email me or save it till February. I don't think will remember today in February, but who knows? So definitely keep in touch. And I hope everybody has a great holiday season, and we'll see everybody in February.